This is John Kohler with OKRaw.com here in my backyard. In my backyard I have this great persimmon tree growing. And today what we're going to talk about on the OK Raw show, we're going to talk about persimmons, one of my favorite fruits in the whole wide world. So you can see here, this tree basically drops all its leaves and it's ready to eat now in December time. That's when the fruits generally ripen and are available anywhere from September through December, and sometimes you can still find them a little bit later for the U.S. grown fruits. And also in the off season they're actually grown in Israel and then imported. But today we're going to talk about these fresh persimmon fruits. Let's first talk about the tree. Tree does really well in climate, places where it's not a super cold winter. So if it snows where you live, you probably can't grow persimmons. Here in Northern California, Southern California, and other places, you can grow persimmons just fine. So this is my persimmon tree, and one of the problems with the persimmon is usually we cover this with a bird net. We didn't cover it this year. So what happens is the birds love to eat the persimmons. They'll just sit here and they'll just peck away at the flesh and they'll eat it, and they love persimmons. So luckily I have so many persimmons that they've left me some to eat. So now's the time I'm going to harvest them all. You definitely want to get them off the tree before a good hard frost. They don't really like a hard frost. So I'm growing the Fuyu variety here, which is the flatter variety, which is the non-astringent variety. So there's two kinds of persimmons, astringent and non-astringent. So let's go ahead and let's pick a persimmon here. And we're going to go ahead and take it inside, share with you this persimmon and some other varieties of persimmons that I purchased at the local market. So we're inside, and now we're going to talk about some of the different varieties of persimmons that I have here today to share with you. Persimmons are one of my favorite fruits. They originally hail from China. They're also grown in places like Japan and Korea, which produces a lot of tonnage of the persimmon. Also in America, they're pretty much grown in California for the most part. And as I said, they're in season from September to December, and maybe sometimes into January if you could find them. As I had mentioned earlier, there's an astringent variety and a non-astringent variety. And what that means is the astringent variety, if you eat them when they're not ripe, it's like eating a banana when it's not ripe. It makes your mouth kind of pucker up and it's not really good, but like 10 times worse than an unripe banana actually. And the astringent varieties are known as the high chia variety. So that's this style right here, an acorn variety persimmon. They need to be as soft as an overripe avocado, so kind of like soft and mushy. Even if it's a little bit soft, it still might have some astringent left. So these are more like a persimmon pudding when you're eating them, instead of being nice and firm. So as we go down the line here, there's different kinds of persimmons, and I guess we'll go ahead and introduce each one of those. So you just heard me talk about the astringent variety, the high chia persimmon, and that looks much like an acorn shape. This happens to be a fairly larger one. They also come smaller as well. Then next to this, we have a very special persimmon. This is called a chocolate persimmon, which is actually black or brown on the inside. These are absolutely incredible, have a delicious flavor, and these aren't to be confused with the black sapote, which is also sometimes referred to as the chocolate persimmon. These, the black sapote and this real chocolate persimmon they're in the same family of trees. Next here we have the Connoisseurs Persimmon right here. This is called the Amagaki Persimmon, and this one is absolutely amazing. I have friends that just go wild and crazy for this persimmon, saying it's like the best persimmon in the whole world. That being said, there are over 1,000 varieties of persimmons, and these are only a sampling of them. The next persimmon here we have is actually called the Giant Fuyu Persimmon. So much like the Fuyus next to it, this is just the giant version. They get much larger. I've never really particularly cared for the giant Fuyus too much. I like this more common standard Fuyu right here, and this is the flat persimmon. So from here on, these styles here can be eaten hard or soft. So you can eat them hard like an apple, or you can eat them soft when they're like pudding. It doesn't matter because the astringency basically, they're not as astringent once they're at a certain ripeness. They do have astringency. Say if you picked them off the tree green, they'd still be very astringent. But once they get to a nice, orange color, you can't eat them even if they're still hard. These two, on the other hand, this one needs to be super soft because it'll be really astringent if it's not super soft. And the chocolate is kind of a variant. It's kind of halfway in between. It needs to be a little bit soft, and it's best when it's actually a little bit soft. If it's too soft, you can still eat it, but I prefer persimmons that are much, much firmer. One of the questions I get a lot is, hey John, I've got a tree of high chias. I can't possibly wait till they're all ripe because the birds get them and whatnot. If you harvest them early, you want to harvest them when they're have a nice deep color, and I'd encourage you to pick all your fruits, when selecting them from the store or off the tree, with a nice dark deep color. The darker the color, the more antioxidants and the more ripe and the more nutrients there are in the fruit. And most people don't say that. Plus, riper fruit often tastes better. So if you do have a high chia and you want it to ultra ripen, ultra fast, what can you do? Well, there's a couple things. You could put some persimmons in a paper bag with like a banana, and that'll release the ethylene gas. The ethylene gas will cause the persimmon to ripen up faster. Another trick that the Chinese do is you take a persimmon and you just put it underneath some rice in a bowl. And why this works is because the rice basically keeps the ethylene gas that the persimmon is emitting like in the surrounding area, so the persimmon will ripen up faster. Another trick to ripen your high chias faster is to actually put it in the freezer. Once you put it in the freezer and you freeze it and then you take it out, it'll be really like soft and mushy, but then the astringency will also go away. The thing I like to do when I harvest a high chia tree, there's some in this area, and they're not ripe, I like to just take the high chias and then just slice them up, even if they're not ripe, in the dehydrator. And then once I dehydrate them, then they're actually edible and you can eat them. You can also cook with the unripe ones, and then in the cooking process, the astringency is also lost. But that being said, freshest and ripest is always best. Let's talk about some of the nutritional benefits of persimmons. Persimmons are great, wonderful fruits. They're high in fiber, they're low in fat, and they're so sweet and delicious. They also contain high levels of vitamin A and vitamin C, antioxidants, and phytonutrients that'll help you stay young. So things like zeaxanthin, which are actually really good for your eyes. Things like lycopene, everybody knows about lycopene, how it's really good for us. It's also high in minerals, has a B complex vitamins. They're absolutely delicious, and they make a great snack any time of the day. So the best way to enjoy persimmons are basically just fresh. Take them and bite into it. They are one of the super sweetest fruits that you could find for a fresh fruit. They're absolutely delicious. If I have an overabundance of persimmons, my second favorite thing to do with the persimmons is to dehydrate them. And, in Japan, they basically dehydrate whole high chias. Once they're picked, they hang the high chias. They basically peel off the outer skin. And there's actually an underskin. Many people don't know that. There's a outer skin and then the underskin. The underskin, when it gets ripe, when the high chia gets ripe, you could peel out the outer skin. The underskin is basically like orange sugar. It's absolutely the most amazing part of the persimmon, but you just peel off the outer skin and then they hang it. And then these will basically just dry while they're hanging, and those are like nature's best candy. They're my absolutely favorite dried fruit in the whole world. So dehydrating persimmons are my next best way and favorite way to consume the persimmons if I can't eat them all fresh. So next, let's talk about picking persimmons. So when you're at a tree or at the store, the best way to pick a persimmon is use your eyes. And you want to get persimmons that are nice, dark, rich color. Of course, they always say avoid blemishes, but in some cases, the blemishes probably make the fruit sweeter. So here's one example. So here's the example of a Fuyu that was from the farmer's market. And this is the Fuyu that I just picked from my backyard. So you can see here, there's got some black marks here, and if you look really closely, you could almost see like a marbling type effect. It looks like the skin is cracked, but the skin's not cracked. This is just actually it's like on a paint canvas. If you splattered it with ink and it dried fast, that's what it looks like. Those I like to call sugar spots. So if you can find a persimmon with the sugar spots or the cracking, those are actually the best to get. Even if it does have some black spots, that's actually getting more sweet than, say, this kind that's just dark, rich orange color. When picking any persimmon, I like to usually get them a little bit firm, unless it's high chias, in which case I want to eat them now. You want to get them a little bit soft, but a nice, deep color is probably the paramount thing to look for. Next, let's go ahead and cut open two of these persimmons to show you what they look like inside. They're absolutely very beautiful fruits, and I have used them to decorate pies and cakes and things like that. So we're going to take the knife here and just cut some pieces off. And look at that, when we cut it open, you could see these like little lines, and if there were seeds in there, the seeds would be between the lines, but that makes like a little star pattern. It's really beautiful. So that is the common Fuyu. Next, let's go ahead and open up this chocolate persimmon. Show you what it looks like. There's definitely some seeds inside here. But look how dark that one is. That one is one dark persimmon. That's a chocolate persimmon. They're absolutely my favorite. They're so delicious, and they are actually very hard to find. Man. For those of you that know, this tastes between a cross between a standard persimmon and a Chico Sapote. It has a really cool flavor, nice and sweet. It's probably my favorite persimmon. So one of my favorite things besides eating my persimmons and dehydrating them to eat later, my little man here, Chico, he loves persimmons. He's actually just waiting for me to cut this open for him. Chico, get back. He loves persimmons. So one of my favorite things to do is to cut up the persimmons and feed it to Chico. Persimmons are fine for dogs to eat, and as you can see, he loves them. He could eat a whole persimmon to himself. And persimmons are actually really good for the dogs, high in antioxidants, much better than any kind of canned food, of course. And he just loves these things so much. But don't feed the seeds to the dogs. The seeds are not good for the dogs, but the fruit's just fine. Usually just like to cut it up for him, or sometimes when I'm biting off pieces myself, I'll just bite off one piece and then give it to him. And as you can see, he loves it so much, he's just waiting for each and every bite. So this is John Kohler with OKRaw.com with Chico, who's still enjoying his persimmons. And I'm going to enjoy some persimmons next. So hopefully you've learned more about persimmons today. And, buy and eat some fresh persimmons. They're the best in the world. We'll see you next time.